You know,
Why are they coming out?
I think people realize that their vote matters, and that it is not just perfunctory, and that you actually go out, and this might be the vote that carries. I mean, Al Gore was running around and saying, one more vote in each precinct is the difference.
I was asking it 2 months ago, could we have a popular winner different from an electoral winner?
Yeah, we could, but I don't think that's going to happen. And one of the other things that I think happened tonight, is that the press said, this is going to be the closest race in history. That made people believe that their vote was important. The other thing is, we had some really hotly contested Senate races. We had some really contested congressional races. Those are things that I'm really interested in, and I think that got the vote out too. And when the vote turns out, the Democrats do well.
Senator, how could Bush lose his brother's state and Gore possibly lose his own state?
Yeah, I think Gore will lose Tennessee. As a matter of fact, you haven't called it yet, but I was with with Bush 5 times in Tennessee, and you could feel the enthusiasm. And I don't know anything about the rest of the country anymore, but I think I know something about Tennessee, and my guess is that Bush will carry Tennessee.
And what about Arkansas?
I think we'll lose Tennessee, and I think it is likely we will lose Arkansas, and I don't think we need them to win.
Could win Pennsylvania?
I think we'll win Pennsylvania.
You're still holding out on that. Are you surprised Ohio's still out?
Yes. I mean, look, the only wisdom is in the numbers, and we don't have them now.
All right, why is this so close? I mean, one would have made a case the country's in good shape. Clinton didn't campaign, but he's got a 62 to 63 rating. Why is it even close?
I mean, the analysts are going to have to figure that out, but obviously the undecided voters split.
I think that the issues became the same issues in each camp, and the differentiation was very difficult. For example, I know in the exit polling that the issue of being sure that you had Medicare covering prescription drugs, not having it done privately, that should go to Gore's benefit. If Bush should win, Bush is going to win on what is really a Democratic issue. In other words, I think that Bush was able to fuzzy up the issues to the point that people didn't differentiate between where Gore stood and where Bush stood.
Larry, I think that this was an issue-dominated campaign, and I think that's good. I think it probably promoted a vast turnout, which I think almost certainly we're going to see. But there's something else there that we don't know yet, and probably won't know till we've examined the results in a few days. And whether it was fierce competition between Bush and Gore, or the issues, or something else, I don't know. I'm even bold enough to think that the country has decided that elections are important, and that they ought to turn out and vote.
Good thinking.
And if they have, you know, that's a major victory for the country.
Well, and also it's quite possible that prosperity mattered. I mean, most people in this country are better off, and that simple fact, which people have told us for a long time can drive an election, may have done it once again.
All 3 of our guests will be back at midnight. We'll come a little after midnight and be with you for the full hour with this outstanding panel. Certainly no mandate here, right?
No, it's not going to happen.
We thank Ann Richards, Howard Baker, and Bob Woodward. In the next hour, we'll talk with the mayor of New York, Rudy Giuliani. Right now, back to the national desk in Atlanta on this extraordinary election night. Guys?
A very good guest to have on at the top of the hour, because more polls will be closing, including New York. CNN's live coverage of this election 2000 will continue in just a moment.
We're 13 minutes away from another set of states having their polls closed, having the doors closed, if you will, on the places where voters go to cast their ballots. Let's take a look now at the electoral map at this moment. With George W. Bush has 130 electoral votes. His states are in red. Al Gore, 122 electoral votes. Those states in yellow are the states where we are not yet, at this moment, able to declare a winner. And let's take a look at what those states are. They are New Hampshire with 4, electoral votes, the state of Ohio with 21, West Virginia 5, Pennsylvania, significant battleground state, 23, Missouri 11, Tennessee another 11, the home state of Al Gore, and Arkansas 6. And we are able to call Pennsylvania for Vice President Al Gore. 23 electoral votes go to the Vice President, Jeff Greenfield, Bernie Shaw. This is a major disappointment for George W. Bush, and Jeff makes it all the harder for him to put together a winning combination.
It absolutely does. It means that of the states that are now undecided, we can begin to say that George Bush has to more or less run the table on them. He has got to win Ohio. He has got to win Tennessee and Arkansas. He has got to win Missouri. The polls close at 9 o'clock. New York was never in play. The West Coast hasn't been favorable to the Republicans for a while. So with the loss of Pennsylvania and Michigan and Illinois and Florida, all battleground states, the states that we have left in yellow are the place where George W. Bush's candidacy must prevail if he's to survive across the Mississippi River. It's going to be tough.
Very tough, Jeff. And for the first time tonight, Al Gore has gone up on Governor Bush. The vice president, 145 electoral votes. The governor from Texas, 130 electoral votes. And as you say, poll closings coming up at the top of the hour, and we'll see what happens.
Al Gore having exactly half the number needed at this hour. We were able to call Pennsylvania at about 8:48 Eastern time. He now has about half the number, exactly half the number needed. But as Jeff's just said, we've got polls closing in the coming hour. Wisconsin, Oregon, later on tonight,
New
a number
York,
of states.
among others. But right now we're going to go to Nashville, Tennessee and Austin, Texas simultaneously to Candy Crowley and John King. Candy, the Bush people keep giving you scenarios of how they can win without Florida and how they can win without Michigan. Now at some point this scenario begins to get a little dicey, doesn't it?
At some point you run out of electoral votes that are there to be had, particularly when you realize that California has always seemed like very safe Gore territory despite a Bush effort there. So yes, Pennsylvania just another big one, and we're running out of battlegrounds and running out of states with major electoral votes. Now, as you know, Bush has made a play for a lot of the 11 electoral votes, 10 electoral votes, all of those states, Tennessee and Arkansas, but it now becomes, as you say, it comes to a point where George Bush is going to have to run the table if he's going to stay in this game.
You told us earlier that Jesse Jackson was being dispatched into Philadelphia, that this turnout effort by some of the Gore operatives was going on into the night. Is it their sense now, can you tell us, that they now begin to see, to use a phrase from another generation, the light at the end of the tunnel? John?
Jeff, a lot of people think that it's, just cliche or just conversation to fill out a campaign when we talk about how important the ground war is. Just look at the state of Pennsylvania and look at some key elections in recent years. The election of the Philadelphia Mayor John Street, elections in the Pittsburgh area, the mayor and the city council. In those cases, African Americans in Philadelphia made the difference. Labor unions in the western part of the state made the difference. The Democrats have poured $30 to $40 million of their own money into this, plus money from the labor unions. They believe tonight it is making the difference. They also believe the nonstop campaigning by Al Gore helped out in the last few days, particularly in the state of Florida. Based on their projections now, they assume the state of New York will go their way in the next hour. They think they're going to win by a significant margin in California. They're counting on Washington State.
So
that's still a battleground worth looking at. They think they're just about 18 electoral votes short of winning the White House if this keeps going. Again, the vice president's still on the phone. Just a few moments ago, I was told, making a phone call into Missouri. The poll's still open there, making drive-time radio calls into Colorado, New Mexico, and Arizona. They are much more optimistic here. Cheers among the staff at the Gore Hotel. Cheers in public here in Nashville, as we've just called the big state of Pennsylvania for the vice president.
All right, John King in Nashville, Candy Crowley in Austin. Back here at the studio in Atlanta, let's go quickly to Hal Bruno over at our big electoral map. Hal, what happened in Pennsylvania to pull it together for Gore?
There was a big surprise, Judy. It was over here. He not only won the city of Philadelphia, but he did very well in the suburbs, and he held his own over here in the west, which is the swing section of the state. That's the way he did it.
And he was in, let's look at that tally of how many times these candidates were in the state of Pennsylvania. I have George Bush in there at least 12 times since the conventions, Al Gore in there 13 times. That tells you as clearly as anything, this is a state both these gentlemen felt they needed to have in order to pull this
And so far,
victory
every
together.
every key big battleground state, Gore has taken them tonight so far. Florida, Pennsylvania, Illinois, Michigan.
Ohio is still out.
Let's take a look at how Al Gore won Pennsylvania. Well, this was absolutely crucial. Let's look at people who decided how to vote in the last 3 days. They voted 53 to 36 for Gore over Bush. Now, only about 1 in 10 voters decided how to vote in the last 3 days, but they gave Gore his margin. It was at the end of this campaign in the last few days that Gore won Pennsylvania. Among the 90% who decided earlier, Bush had a slight edge. So it was just decided in Pennsylvania only in the last couple of days.
Bill Schneider, our coverage will continue in a moment with more poll closings at the top of the hour. Quite a handful of states.
4 minutes till more polls close. Let's go straight to the Capitol gang and Al Hunt.
Thanks, Judy. I'm here with Cato Byrne and with Robert Novak. All right, Bob, for weeks we've been talking about Gore has to pull off the political trifecta, Florida, Michigan, Pennsylvania. He did it. Where does that leave us?
I think it leaves him just a step from being the next president of the United States. He could do it, I think, by winning his home state of Tennessee, which everybody had thought that Governor Bush was going to win. My information is the returns are not that good for Governor Bush. But then if Bush does, if he's able to get Tennessee, then we move out west to some important states out there, Arizona, Oregon, and before that, Iowa. And those are states that Bush would have to win. He has very little margin of error and not much confidence, I think, in the Bush ranks right now, considering the disappointments they've had so far tonight.
We're in hand-to-hand combat, right, Kate?
Absolutely. With Gore winning those big 3 battleground states, it's up to Bush now to win all the skirmish states. He's got to win states Bill Clinton carried twice. He's got to win Wisconsin, Oregon, Iowa, New Mexico. He's got to win a couple that have already closed but are too close to call. New Hampshire, as I said, he better hope they're kinder this time around. Ohio, West Virginia. He needs to be greedy about all the smaller states that are still out there because this gives Al Gore such a boost.
You know, one thing I'm struck by, this is primarily looking at the exit polls. In 1980, we talked about Reagan Democrats. After that, in 1992, we talked about some Clinton Republicans. He got some Republican votes. I'll tell you, George Bush is not getting any Democrats, and Al Gore is not getting any Republicans. There will be no mention of Gore Republicans or Bush Democrats, which may create a mandate problem for governance, whichever one of these guys wins, Bob.
But the real story is that the ground war has apparently been won by the Democrats.
Yeah.
The unions came
really
out, the blacks came out, and that's why some of the Republicans I've talked to are a little bit on the pessimistic side, because they've been losing the ground war in state after state. The only other point is that the ground war is most effective with union members and, may I say, African Americans, and in these other states, they're perhaps a little less important. I think Tennessee becomes really hugely important. Who would have thought that the battle for Tennessee by Al Gore would be that important?
Tennessee or Missouri, which is going to, may stay open late, too. Michael Hooley has put together for the Gore people a great get-out-the-vote operation.
Well, the Democrats had a terrific get-out-the-vote operation in '98, and it cost the Republicans some seats, but they promised themselves that they'd match it this time. But it seems as though in the big states they haven't.
And because of the federal judge in St. Louis, we won't know for another 3 hours, will we?
Well, we may not know until tomorrow because there are absentee ballots coming in some states, and there are also going to be some states that may be so close that we'll have no idea. For instance, I think CNN has given 3 votes in Maine to Al Gore, but there's a 4th, which is 1 CD out there that could be critical in the final analysis. Wouldn't that be a field day for us, Bob Novak?
We can only hope.
That's right. Kate, a final word?
I'm going to stay right here, Al. I'm not going to miss a thing.
We will be back later, though. We now go back to our election headquarters in Atlanta, where it's 9 o'clock in the east, and the polls are about to close in New York, Wisconsin, and New Mexico.
From CNN Center in Atlanta, coverage of Election 2000 continues. Here again, Judy Woodruff, Bernard Shaw, Jeff Greenfield, and Bill Schneider.
And indeed, those polls have closed, and the First Lady of the United States of America will become a senator from New York State. Hillary Rodham Clinton tonight defeating Congressman Rick Lazio.
I think it is safe to say, folks, that we have written a new page in American political history. Not only the first First Lady ever to hold public office, someone who